Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining JETRO Jakarta and GK Plug and Play seminar themed the rise of corporate tech company collaboration, how to adapting the open innovation. My name is Wataru Ueno from JETRO Jakarta and today's MC. First, let me explain about JETRO because we have not only Japanese but also Indonesian attendees today. JETRO is Japanese government organization promoting the trade and investment between Japan and the rest of the world, providing information on the business environment to the Japanese companies, holding the business matching, and we're holding lots of webinars or something like that. Also, we promote the collaboration between Japanese companies and foreign startups. So we are very keen to create a new business model in terms of that. So, okay, let us begin the webinar. First, I'd like to invite Mr. Suzuki, President Director of JETRO Jakarta, for opening remarks. 鈴木所長、お願いします。
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for attending this webinar. I'm Keiichi Suzuki, President Director of JETRO Jakarta. Today, we are very happy to collaborate with GK Plug and Play for holding this webinar, which is well-known accelerator, early-stage investor, as well as innovation platform. Today's topic is open innovation. It is the concept proposed by Professor Henry William Chesbrough at the University of California, Berkeley. And the idea is to promote innovation by utilizing external ideas, knowledge, and technologies from outside the firm. The opposite concept is a closed innovation, where firms rely only on their own internal resources to advance their technology. This style was very popular before, but it reached the limit and been weakened. With closed innovation, more and more difficult for companies to meet the demand in complex and fast-changing market. Currently, it is widely recognized that companies should adopt open innovation for accelerating innovation and creating more values by collaborating with tech companies. However, it seems that many Japanese companies still do not have clear image of open innovation and its merits and demerits. Today's theme is the rise of corporate tech company collaboration, how to adopt open innovation. We can learn more about open innovations from the Today, we have very distinguished speakers and moderator. We would like to hear their insights on open innovation from each perspective. It is our pleasure to welcome Guy Kellaway, Communication Director of Nestle Indonesia. It is the largest food company in the world and very active for open innovation globally. Martin Reyhan, Suryohusodo, co-founder and CEO of Otoklix, an automotive aftermarket services platform. Aaron Neo, Director of GK as moderator. JETRO Jakarta has held series of transfer and collaborations between Japanese and Indonesian companies are happening now. We'd like to seek possibility of collaboration between Japanese and Indonesian companies. We are very happy to support. And this is our first collaboration with Plug and Play. We have network with Japanese companies, and Plug and Play has network with Indonesian startups and corporates. With the collaboration in many ways. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Suzuki 社長。ありがとうございました。So next, the also opening remarks from the GK Plug and Play. I'd like to invite Angita-san, Vice President of Corporate Innovation, Plug and Play, GK Plug and Play. Angita-san, please.
Thank you. And so I will share my screen here first. Okay, so hello everyone. Thank you for having me. Thank you for being here this afternoon at this event. So my name is Anggita, and I'm the VP of Corporate Innovation here in Plug and Play Indonesia. It's my pleasure to introduce to you who we are, Plug and Play Indonesia, and what we do here. So globally, Plug and Play, we are essentially a startup accelerator, but more than that, we have actually built the tech and innovation ecosystem since the 90s. We started in our Lucky building in Silicon Valley, California. It was owned by our CEO, Syed Amidi, and Syed decided to invest in some of the tenants that were in the Lucky building back then. One of them being companies like Google, PayPal, Logitech, and Danger. And ever since, Syed decided to scale up the business. And ever since, we have worked with more than 20,000 startups. We've been in 40 global locations, and we have worked in 18 different vertical industries. So we have a unique offering compared to other accelerator program because we connect not only startups, but also corporations together. We call it our innovation platform, which consists of 3 main programs. The first being the accelerator program, and the second is corporate innovation program, and the third is the venture capital. Essentially, what we do is we connect the change makers, especially the corporation side, which are the industry leaders and top level executives, with startups, which are the brightest mind and innovators in the planet, to create an open innovation ecosystem. So this connection so far has resulted in one of the most influential tech company today. And it has benefited more than 400 corporate partners worldwide. We have been working in innovation in 18 different vertical industries. And we have helped our startup partners and corporate partners to build global reach. So moving on to Plug and Play Indonesia. We opened our office in Jakarta in 2016 after our president, President Jokowi, visited our HQ in Silicon Valley. He was interested in our unique approach, and then he invited us to open an office in Indonesia. So in 2016, together with Gan Consolindo, we opened our first office in Jakarta. So with Gan Consolindo, it's a collaboration where we invest in startups through accelerator program and a very strong corporate innovation platform. So right now, currently, every year, we run 2 batches of accelerator program. And since 2016, we have a total 80 plus startups accelerated, 25 plus investment made, and we have signed with 7 corporate partners in Indonesia. So the program in Indonesia is tailored so they can help our corporate partners in 4 different areas. Number 1 is to explore experiment through sourcing, meeting, and deep diving into the startup ecosystem on a global scale. The second area is value creation through launching POCs and pilot projects with clearly defined goals and solutions. The third area is we build a culture of external and internal innovation throughout their whole company. And of course, area number 4 is just beyond startup. It's not only startup because we allow our corporate partners to meet like-minded people from different industries. So these are the 4 benefits of becoming our corporate partners. Number 1 is you're entitled to a deal flow sessions. This is basically a private sessions between corporate partners and our startup partners based on the technology interests of our corporate partners. And second, we involve our corporate partners to dictate the technology focus for each batch of our accelerator program and obtain a board seat to drive the program's direction. We also will create a set of activities so our corporate partners can engage with our startups during the 3-month accelerator program. And of course, benefit number 3, our corporate partners are entitled to all of our activities across Asia Pacific. And number 4 is dedicated team to ensure all the innovation projects are running smoothly. So this is how we involve our corporate partners in our accelerator program. First, we will aggregate the tech interests from our partners. And then from there, we will source around 500 startup plus. And together with our partners, we will shortlisting, we will reviewing, and finally, we will choose 10 startups that will be included in our accelerator program. And at the end of the day, we hope at least 3 startups will get investment at the end of the program. So these are some of the corporate activities that we do. So first, we have PNP Innovation Roadshow. In here, the startup will go to the corporate offices and they will have the chance to pitch their ideas and then perhaps also potential collaboration ideas. We also have PNP Masterclass, where we basically host an internal workshop for our corporate partners, especially to their business users, with the topic can be requested variously from investment, digital collaboration, industry update, or even technology update too. We also have C-level executive dinner. This is where we invite leaders from our corporate partners and also corporate giants out there so they can share their insights and their experience in facing digital transformations. We also have Corporate Innovation Day, which is essentially a reverse pitch day. In this event, the corporate partner will be the one that hosts this mini summit, and then they will be the one that introduce their company and also introduce their innovation program. And at the end of the day, we have our expo, which is also the final event for our accelerator program. Here, the startups will do the pitching, and then our corporate partners will have the opportunity to do networking with other corporates, investors, media, community, and mentors as well. And like I said, every corporate partner is entitled to all of these activities, not only in Indonesia, but across our Asia Pacific offices. So to support all of that innovation platform, these are the startups portfolio that we have in Indonesia. We are very heavy in financial services, food and agri-tech, and industry 4.0, and more verticals are opening up. But not only that, all of our corporate partners are also entitled to leverage our entire ecosystem, from media and PR to our technology partners, even our corporate innovation partners, and of course, all of our mentors that are coming from different backgrounds and expertise. So these are our current corporate partners in Indonesia. And this year, we are happily welcoming Nestle as our newest corporate partner in Indonesia. And we cannot wait to work with Nestle in innovation projects across verticals. So that's all from me. I hope this can give you a gist of what is Plug and Play and what we do in Indonesia. Again, thank you for having me. Thank you for being here. I hope you enjoy the rest of the events. Back to you, Wataru.
Yep. Thank you, Angita. So, from now, I'm going to deliver a keynote speech. Then after that, we are going to have the talk show. I know that many people are looking forward to the talk show, but before that, I'm going to tell you what the current Japanese company situation in Indonesia and what COVID has affected them. Then the current situation of the collaboration between Japanese companies and Indonesian startups. So I'm going to share the screen. Okay. Actually, my presentation will last about 5 minutes to 6 minutes. It's not so long. We've just published the result of the latest JETRO survey called Business Condition of Japanese Companies in Asia and Oceania. We sent a questionnaire to the Japanese companies in this region, and we've got about 6,000 valid response. Still, the only Japanese version is available, but English version will be available soon in our website. I'm happy to explain how COVID-19 has affected Japanese companies in Indonesia and current situation of their collaboration with local startups, and how Japanese companies are enjoying or trying to adopt digital technologies. I'm going to explain this by picking up some data from our survey. My key message here is that there are huge possibilities for collaboration between Japanese companies and Indonesian startups to overcome various problems Japanese companies are now facing. Okay, this graph shows that the ratio of Japanese companies which are expecting profit in each fiscal year. The red line shows the Japanese companies in Indonesia. Same as other countries in ASEAN, the ratio in 2020 decreased sharply because of COVID-19, especially for automobile sectors or iron or non-iron industries. So this graph shows that the proportions of companies expecting to expand their business in the next 1, 2, or 2 years. Indonesia marked its highest ratio in 2012, but after that remained decreasing, as you can see. Vietnam and India are higher than Indonesia. Especially for Indonesia, Japanese companies now tend to decrease the function of producing value-added product. This page shows that the proportion of the companies reconsidering business strategy or business model. More than half of companies said yes. Reconsidering means that cancellation of investing in new facilities or cutting employees or something like that. It's a little bit negative aspect. Regarding the sales, many Japanese companies are now considering to adopt digitalization, using the e-commerce or something like that. So these days, it is said that Indonesia is less attractive as investment destination compared with other ASEAN countries like Vietnam, even before COVID hit the world. This graph shows the common problems Japanese companies are facing in the ASEAN region, like wage hike, orders from clients decreasing cost, and consumption downturn. Surprisingly, Indonesia ranks first in many items. Japanese companies are concerned about especially wage hike. That's why omnibus law is now controversial in Indonesia. Here is a year-on-year wage increase from 2020 to 2021. For manufacturing, Indonesia is the highest rate in ASEAN. We understand now wage hike is one of the major problems for Japanese companies. However, even if wage is high, productivity is high. In that case, there's no problem, right? In this page, we asked whether Japanese companies are satisfied with the minimum wage set by the government from the perspective of productivity. Only 20% of the Japanese companies in Indonesia, they are satisfied, only 20%. Wage in Indonesia is getting higher, but productivity has not reached what Japanese companies are expecting. This graph shows that the number of Japanese companies collaborating or planning to collaborate with local startups. In Indonesia, we have about 30 companies already collaborating out of 500 Japanese companies. From Japanese companies' perspective, the way of collaboration is, for example, purchasing the startup product or service, open innovation with startups, and acquisition, and so on. Its purpose is to adapt startup creativity, technology, and access to the Indonesian market. As I mentioned, that one of the purpose of collaboration is to penetrate the market. Working with Indonesian startups is to get access not only Indonesian market, but also to the ASEAN market. The pandemic of COVID-19 gives us the momentum for adopting digital technologies. However, more companies are trying to adapt. More companies are facing the obstacles of introducing it. This graph exactly shows that 70% of companies set their obstacles for adopting digital technologies. The common obstacles for adopting digital are lack of human resources who are familiar with the digital technologies in office, and adopting digital technology cost is too much. And half of the Japanese companies in Indonesia said that the lack of human resources who are familiar with digital technologies in office is one of the problems. So in summary, in conclusion, as we have seen, Japanese companies have been facing various problems even before this pandemic. On top of that, because of this pandemic, many companies had no choice but to change their business model or business strategy, like adopting digital technologies for penetrating market or increasing productivity while struggling with wage hike. In these areas, I think there should be possibility of collaboration between Japanese companies and Indonesian startups or tech companies. As you know, there are many ways for collaboration, but one of them, I think, is the open innovation. It's today's topic. And I'm looking forward to hearing the insight on open innovation from great speakers in the next talk show. Yeah, thank you so much. So thank you for listening. Then finally, we can move to the talk show. Before starting, during the webinar, you can post your question via Q&A function, but time is so limited, so we cannot go through all questions. So from now, Aaron Neal, Director of GK Plug and Play, will moderate. Aaron, floor is yours.
Thank you, Wataru-san, for the very insightful presentation. And welcome, guys. Very happy to be here. Welcome, Reyhan, Guy. Good to see you guys again. Very excited to have these two panelists today share their insights on open innovation, because I think they'll be able to give you a very wide range of perspectives, from Reyhan, who's in a startup, who has raised money from very prominent investors, to Guy, who's with Nestle, who's been Nestle for a while. And as they said, Nestle is the biggest food company in the world. So very, very excited. Before we jump into the questions, I would like to open up the floor to the both of you to share a bit about yourself, your role in your company, and then we can dive right in. So I think, Guy, you want to kick things off?
Sure. So thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Pleasure to be here. And thank you for the invitation. So very briefly, my name is Guy. I'm Communications Director at Nestle Indonesia. I've been with Nestle over 20 years, mainly in business management roles and mainly also in developing countries. So now in Indonesia for about 3 years. And I would say, although prior to COVID, it was very much on our agenda and in play, but the drive of innovation, and specifically open innovation, has definitely been accelerated over the last 12 months. And now also with our partnership with Plug and Play. So yeah, happy to talk about it more.
Thank you, Guy. Reyhan?
Good afternoon, guys. So it's an honor to be here. So my name is Martin. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Otoklix. So Otoklix is a tech startup in the automotive aftermarket company in Indonesia. Basically, we are looking to create an end-to-end servicing experience using technology to provide personalized service recommendation based on each distinct car, providing convenience on transparency of all the service pricing regarding on all the automotive servicing needs. Through our mobile app, website, and also an auto body chat support that we develop. In addition to the convenience and transparency, we also provide cost-effective service pricing as we also streamline the procurement supplies from manufacturers all the way to the workshops using our procurement platform, trying to enable the cost-effective structure of the existing multiple value chain in the automotive aftermarket currently. So happy to share a lot regarding open innovation, particularly on helping SMEs and also collaborating with large enterprises to try and transform the automotive aftermarket through tech adoption, particularly in Indonesia as well as Southeast Asia. So hopefully you guys can get some insights here, and happy to share as much as possible.
Thank you, Martin. So now that we know a bit more about you guys, I think to kick things off, I know Keishi-san already shared the definition of open innovation, but I'd be interested to get your own personal perspective on what open innovation means to you, especially in your current roles. Guy?
Yeah, I think there's definitely going to be different definitions depending on the company, the context, and the objective of the innovation itself. So for me in my role, I think, within Nestle, we have three areas of or the trifecta: internal innovation, external innovation, and then we have open innovation. And so the role of open innovation in my context today within Nestle, within Indonesia, is actually to bring the best localized ideas with our business problems or our business objectives together. So, we're a big multinational, we're bureaucratic, we do have ongoing innovation processes and systems and projects. But the biggest objective for me in open innovation within Indonesia is actually more around very specific expertise and market insights that together we can partner and have a very symbiotic relationship. So it's about the speed, the agility, and the expertise to answer a problem that as an organization in Indonesia today, we don't know how to do.
Thank you for that, Guy. Just a follow-up question.
Yep.
In your experience, I know you said that you've been focused in emerging markets. Has there been a difference in terms of trying to find localized solutions in Indonesia as opposed to your previous experience in other countries? And what's the landscape like? I think maybe some challenges would be interesting.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because, as a food and beverage company, we have to be hyper local, right? And whether you're Japanese or Indonesian, you also know that when you're talking about food and beverages, there's not one food of Indonesia or one beverage of Indonesia, let alone one culture of ASEAN or Asia. So the challenge actually that I found was there was a lot of people who were looking at Indonesia because of the scale and the opportunity outside of Indonesia and saying, yes, we can help you. But when you really look at their local expertise and insight, it just wasn't there. So it was actually making sure that you found the right balance between the tech that you're looking for or the expertise that you're looking for with that real local insight to be able to bring the two together. And I found that in some other local or developing markets, particularly in Africa, where you just didn't have necessarily the scale of startup expertise.
Okay, that's very interesting. I think this is a very good transition to you, Reyhan. What's your experience been like in terms of, I think maybe in this case, working with larger corporations? I think Guy mentioned that a lot of people are coming to Indonesia because of the scale of the market and they have a need to localize, right? And I know the solution you're offering is very localized, addressing a very local pain point. What has the experience been like so far?
Yeah, so I guess one thing for sure that we're pretty fortunate about, especially with the previous few years, is that the growth of the number of startups that have becoming successful in solving a lot of localized problem. We can see that from the start of actually solving mobility issues with Gojek and Grab, with the food and beverage industry, particularly with Gudang Ada, a lot of other startups have begun to emerge in solving a lot of these very localized issues that began to actually open the eyes of a lot of the larger enterprises to see how a lot of the industries has started to shift. And this creates a lot of communication involved with a lot of these larger enterprises where there are future collaboration that we can get into together. As I think like what Guy has mentioned perfectly makes sense, how a lot of the cases on the collaboration on gathering market insights to fasten the innovation cycle, particularly not only from the larger enterprise perspective, but also from the startup standpoint on how we're able to achieve that mutually symbiotic relationship on achieving or focusing on solving the right problems in the local market, particularly for us, especially in the automotive sector, where it's a very fragmented market, particularly where a lot of larger enterprises are very well established here, in which the problems are very localized based, where the problems in Indonesia in automotive might not be exactly the same as in Singapore or even Vietnam, which is other Southeast Asian countries, where a lot of these collaboration needed with a lot of these larger enterprises that can provide third-party insights. But at the same time, for us as startups, while we receive market insights by talking to the customers, providing technology platform in place to create or provide additional value to the customers, in our case, providing additional value on the convenience and the transparency and gathering insights to reduce the amount of research phase, in a sense, for a lot of these larger enterprises on a lot of these R&Ds involved, in a sense, have create a lot of more fruitful discussion within startups and a lot of these larger enterprises of open innovation or actually the adoption of tech in general in the entire market itself.
Thank you for that, Reyhan. Very insightful. I actually had a question for you. So, I mean, as a startup and addressing this opportunity of open innovation, right? A lot of times it's like, oh, I have this opportunity to fulfill open innovation for a big corporation. But do you see open innovation happening within startups too? Is that something you've been seeing in the past year?
So I can see that there are two different startups, to be honest. So there are one startup that is really aggressively looking in actually doing a lot of collaboration with a lot of corporates with the sole purpose of helping to actually conquer the market much quicker and providing greater value to the customer side. But there are other startups as well that focuses more on the problem that is apparent in the industry. Where I see a lot of pitfalls that were happening is that many startups tend to try to be very aggressive in collaborating with a lot of startups in expense to the common or the main objective of the business. So what we in Otoklix stands for is that we are always open for a lot of this collaboration or this with a lot of these larger enterprises for us to be able to distribute greater value to our customers without the expense on actually achieving our mission. So one thing that I realize is that how we seek collaboration without the expense of actually aborting or abandoning our core vision, in our case, to provide the greatest transparency or service experience to the customers is the most important part, where that will be able to be emphasized with a lot of this collaboration with the larger enterprises and even the SMEs involved in the particular market as well.
Okay, understand. Now that I think we've talked a bit about open innovation from both perspectives, a corporation and a startup, I wanted to get your thoughts on COVID, its impact, and like what is going forward. I know that 2020 has been a very tough year. I think Wataru-san shared very insightful data about Japanese companies and the impacts had on them, specifically in the Indo market. What do you see the relationship between open innovation and the challenges posed by COVID? Is that something that is, I know, Guy, you mentioned that it's something has more urgency for Nestle, but could you give some insight as to why you guys think open innovation is a way that you can address a lot of the problems that you're facing currently?
I'm trying to word this correctly. We have been very fortunate from, I would say, fortunate. So a lot of good has come out of bad, really, from a Nestle perspective. You know, we're a nutrition, health and wellness company. That nutrition is at the heart of our business, and nutrition is what consumers have been looking for over the last 12 months now. So we could have said yes, we're kind of happy with that, and kind of had those advantages. However, what it's done is it's just absolutely step change more an internal mindset, because often that's one of the biggest challenges that we have as a big company is around getting people behind doing something different, right? And what COVID has done is very much, I guess, fast-tracked a change of mindset, of the need, not only the need, but the desire to do it and to be more open, and to be more willing to look outside. Because typically, as a company, we go for big targets and quick results, and we want to see an ROI. Whereas this has enabled different ways of thinking and different ways of understanding what the role of the internal innovation piece is, the ongoing organic business, and then working with external partners as well. So it's definitely been an internal game changer, I would say.
It's very good to hear some positive news about 2020, about COVID. And I think it's very nice to hear something optimistic, right? You mentioned something very interesting just now when I asked you what open innovation means, right? You said you guys categorize in 3 ways: internal, external, and open. So in just saying what you did, has there been more of a shift and a focus? Am I correct to understand that more of it's going towards open? And what's the difference within Nestle with regards to external innovation and open innovation?
Yeah. I'm not sure that there's necessarily been a shift. I think they've all kind of exponentially increased per se. External innovation is where we have a specific partnership. So, for example, on science and technology with a research institute, or a university foundation, or whatever it might be. Open innovation is where we would more put out a business brief or a business problem that we need to solve together. And it is where there is much more of a collaborative relationship. So in everything that we do within our business, we always look for collaborative relationships. So we also want to make sure that we're learning from the startup as much as the startups can also gain from our expertise, our scale, our potential to impact as well. So I would say they've all kind of increased disproportionately or proportionately. And open innovation is where we don't start with an answer in mind at the beginning. So we start with an open question because, and that's why for me it's open, because there isn't one answer. Because if we're not the experts to actually know what the answer could be. We know what the problem is. We don't know what the answer is. Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, very interesting, very insightful. Reyhan, what about you? I know you had some good news last year too, right? So aftermarket, addressing a lot of workshops. I'm sure the lockdown had a lot of impact on you. What's that journey been like, and how has open innovation played in that journey?
Yeah, so there'll be no debate saying that the automotive sector, even with Wataru-san's presentation, says that automotive sector has been affected very negatively throughout the COVID period. With a lot of the lockdowns happening, we can see about 80% of the independent workshops or authorized dealers were forced to close during those lockdown period, causing a direct relationship with a lot of the revenue and the operation that we have in Otoklix here. We were though fortunate that we were supported with very renowned investors like Sequoia as well as Plug and Play that has guided us throughout that period. And I guess in a way, that's how open innovation is actually needs to be existent, not only in a lot of the larger enterprises, but also in a startup perspective. Because in a general sense, how we see it is how you were able to adapt with the extreme circumstance involved, which includes COVID in the case. So during the COVID, how we were able to rethink our strategy, our product, and our customers, understanding what truly matters in a way, refocusing and creating alignment on understanding what is the biggest pain point that the customers are solving, so are actually suffering right now. And with that, trying to rethink our strategy, iterate to be able to adapt with the current situation where a lot of the cases people are working more from remote, not using our cars more, but maintaining to prepare the foundation in place to still be able to provide the guidance as well as the support available throughout the servicing experience journey in the automotive market. So in a sense, it requires us to do a lot of this thinking internally as well as collaborating with other external companies, from looking into how we provide greater value to the customers, even with this current situation. So in a sense, how we might need to pivot, how to adapt with the current circumstance in terms of our marketing strategy, how we build our product, as well as even managing the team workforce in itself will be different because of the situation on hand. And I guess that's how I see innovation plays in a lot of startups, to continuously innovate, pivot, and iterate by adapting with the current circumstance involved. And we are quite fortunate that we are able to recover. And even with this pandemic still going on, we are able to slowly increase our revenue case by case by actually refocusing on the things that truly matters for our customers and delivering greater value by providing transparency and the best servicing experience to the customer.
Thank you for that, Reyhan. It's very good to hear that open innovation, the need to rethink things is something that's applicable across the board, right? From startups that just started a couple of years ago to Nestle that's been around forever. I think Guy brought up something very interesting, Reyhan, that I wanted to ask you. So he mentioned that Nestle, due to COVID, they know what the problem is and they're looking outward to see what the solution is. In your experience over the past year, has there been any examples of big companies doing this too, and you solving one of these problems or issues?
Yeah, so I guess we can see that a lot of the larger conglomerates, particularly I can say in the automotive space, have started to see a lot of these localized problem, whether during COVID or even pre-COVID. Like the largest conglomerate company in Indonesia, the largest automotive company, has seen that, particularly specifically for automotive, is that there's a high churn rate for a lot of these customers post-warranty period of their cars. And looking or leveraging from that problem, they're doing a lot of research, although that I cannot say or represent them saying that if they found the solution or they actually provided or proposed with a solution, we can see that there are a lot of diverting attention to the particular problem rather than proposing the solution on hand. So not only in automotive sectors, but other industries, we can see that larger enterprises begin to see startups as somewhat as the solution to the problem, or at least gathering the insights to the problem in the first place. That's how we were able to see that a lot of the automotive companies approach us discussing on the potential collaboration to solve or to understand the problem together and find the right piece and puzzle the piece together to solve the right problems and the problem that truly matters. So I cannot say in a standpoint of the company's perspective on what they were thinking about, but I can say that there's a direction where a lot of these companies have begun to see that, trying to solve the problems accordingly. But first of all, they use startups as a tool or vehicle, collaborating together to find a win-win situation on understanding the problem and providing the value to the customers.
Okay, I think it's very interesting, both the points that you guys brought up. I think an underlying theme here is that COVID has posed a lot of challenges everywhere. And in times of such uncertainty, getting as many perspectives as possible is good. And a lot of corporations are looking at startups as a way to gain valuable insights on the ground, people that are more in touch with what the consumer is looking for. And for startups, it makes a lot of sense because working with big corporations gives them that sense of credibility and security and validation to the solutions they're providing, right? But open innovation actually, we can see that there are benefits across the board, but a lot of how effective open innovation can be is driven by governmental support. So in your experience, what's the Indonesian government's view towards open innovation? And has it been is Indonesia a market that is very ripe for open innovation, or could the government do more? Guy?
Yeah, I think, well, yeah, governments can always do more, particularly in the terms of perhaps focusing areas of open innovation that will enable economic growth, particularly. So maybe there are going to be some areas that are going to be more impactful or more high growth than others. And I think also, facilitating the individual, right? And the power of the Indonesian startup economy is the everyman, right? There is no bias. There's no. It can come from anywhere and everywhere. Every man, every woman, and I think that's the real beauty also of the Indonesian opportunity. So I would say, not from a corporate perspective, I would say the government can facilitate more on the individual's capability building and connection with accelerators, incubators, general, upskilling of them, so that they have a better chance of also getting their ideas off the ground, getting funded, getting connected with whether it's venture capital or companies and the like. Yeah, that's where I would say the priority really could be greater.
I agree very much so with that. I think in our experience doing GK Plug and Play, we see that even though the government has a lot of high-level initiatives, such as Gerakan 1000 Startups, which is like a movement for 1,000 startups, their support for people pursuing their passion and ideas is still somewhat lacking. Reyhan, I think you mentioned that a lot of the focus of Otoklix is going to be empowering SMEs in times of COVID. What's your experience been like with support from the government? I know if you take an example of Singapore, right? Throughout this COVID period, the news has reported that Singapore has provided so much additional money for SMEs and startups to sustain through this period. What's it been like from your perspective in terms of like government support for you as a startup?
I guess in a way that the government has been able to build or at least slightly improve the foundation of the human capital, as what Guy mentioned, as we can see the Ministry of Education, as Nadeem, as the founder of Gojek now becomes the Ministry of Education to improve the human capital, to be able to improve or enhance the greater innovation. But throughout the COVID period, I guess in a way that there's always room for improvements, although that in a way for us, especially for an earlier stage startup compared to a larger stage startup compared to like Gojek, we have not seen a lot of facilitation involved, particularly on grooming, on improving the particular case directly. But we have seen a lot of initiatives that have been developed by the government indirectly that somewhat creates indirect impact to the society, particularly on how the government has invested a lot in the infrastructure and the human capital that somewhat boosts the productivity of a lot of the distribution for a lot of our spare parts, as well as the human capital involved in a lot of these SMEs as well. So for me to say whether the government, like certain initiatives that they have direct impact to us, particularly early stage, is something that we are looking forward to going forward, which we believe with Nadeem, a very reputable tech entrepreneur, becoming the Minister of Education, we expect that there will be a lot of more facilitation involved, or a lot of initiatives involved or introduced by the government. And we've seen a better possibility or prospect going forward.
I think very insightful too, Martin. I think the key takeaway here is that human capital or talent is very important, no matter what stage, and innovation is really bred from the individual, because Indonesia, I mean, all the innovation you see is driven by, the masses, the everyman, as Guy put it. Now that we talk a bit about the macro, about Indonesia as a whole, I wanted to touch a bit upon open innovation initiatives you guys have for 2021, looking forward, what's coming up. So anything you guys can share? Guy, any high level open innovation initiatives that you guys are looking to launch this year?
Look, let me, maybe just to continue from what we're talking about on COVID. Clearly, it's about reinforcing our position in terms of how do we improve the nutritional status, the education, the knowledge of all Indonesians, whether that's through existing brands, new technology, new products, new categories. Where we see open innovation in the context like this is the ability to test and learn. And actually, it's more about the learn than the test sometimes. for us to launch a new product is a very, very expensive business. We're not good at doing it cheaply, or if we do it cheaply, we don't do it very well. Whereas this is often a more efficient and effective way of testing and learning by partnering with a startup who's already doing it. And so, yeah, we'll be looking at new categories that we're not in today, but very much focused on, I would say, the core and the fringe areas of nutrition, nutrition and health, both in terms of products, but also in terms of services. And that's really where the tech and the digital innovation comes in. We have fantastic digital tools and technology available to us from the global headquarters that are not necessarily directly implementable. And often that has to do with language, education levels, how do we roll it out? And simple thing like, for example, a lot of CRM systems are set up based on emails when a lot of our consumers don't have an email, right? So, how do we balance those two things coming forward? But yeah, I would say very much focused on continuing the education, knowledge building, new tools, new services, and a few new product areas as well.
Understand. Martin, any initiatives Otoklix has for this year?
Well, I guess when we're talking about initiatives, there will be a lot, particularly, especially with an early stage startup, where the goal of an early stage startup, or what you essentially do, is experiment and to provide or build a new or greater product for the customers. And so we have certain discussions on hand with the larger enterprises, particularly in the automotive sectors, in authorized dealers and so on how we were able to create empowerment not only to SMEs, but in this case to a lot of these authorized dealers as well, by providing the connections using our platform directly or to our end customers as well. And where aside from that, like looking into what we see in the standpoint of what we believe is to provide the best service experience to the customers, there are a lot of small sub things that we were exploring, where from the start of actually the insurance side and a lot of the financing side, all in the purpose of looking into the adjacent sectors of how to provide greater value to the customers. So in a high level perspective, there will be a lot of initiatives that we are going to actually introduce throughout the 2021 period. We were pretty excited about it, with all the initiatives centered onto one single focus, which is how to provide greater value to the customers through a lot of this innovation involved, whether as well internally innovation or also collaboration with externals, so that we are able to deliver better product, better value to the customers, particularly in the automotive aftermarket.
Okay, thank you for that. I think now that we hear a bit about your plans, I wanted to tie this conversation back to our audience. I know a lot of the audience here today are people from Japanese companies. And a question that always pops up, right, is like, which sectors or industries in Indonesia have startups that are most mature, I guess, or most on the upward trend? So I know, Reyhan, you're very tapped into the startup industry. Sequoia, I think, probably gives you a lot of insights. So in your opinion this year, what industries are really looking to boom? And with this in mind, I think what's relevant to the audience today is which of these startups can actually collaborate with Japanese companies? Oh, I think you might have internet issues. Guy, I guess to you first. So I know Nestle, you said that you've been looking a lot into nutrition, food, new categories. Mm-hmm. What do you think of the food industry, startup space in Indonesia? Is it what stage would you categorize it as? And
yeah, that's a really good question. I haven't thought about it like that before, but we're all in Indonesia, right? And we all know how many coffee shops there are in Indonesia, and we're all trying to bet which one will be the next Kopi Kenangan or Foray or whatever. So every toko is a potential startup because they're just phenomenal. In terms of food is I would say very, very vibrant. What I find interesting within food that really seems to be exploding quite fast is cloud kitchens. Is really big. And that's definitely something that we can see and we're looking into. And that was really facilitated by food delivery, clearly, and all the restaurants and the warungs going online really enabled cloud kitchens to expand. And I would say also healthy eating, healthy snacks, healthy versions of everything, traditional healthier foods and ingredients, whether it's jamu and other such products are really exploding from what I can see for sure. Yeah.
So
I would say from a marketing, what I don't see so much, interestingly, just to maybe turn the question around, is on digital technology from a marketing perspective. I see a lot of that happening outside of Indonesia, less inside Indonesia. At the moment, maybe it'll come, but yeah, that's where I would say there's probably from where I look, less activity.
do you think it's a function of people looking at an industry and thinking at the very lowest level, oh, if it's food, I have to create the food, whereas marketing is more of a support function? You think that's the progression? Or,
Yeah, but I think it also comes back to the research that was shown in terms of the scale of capability on digital, which is a challenge. It is at all levels. So I think it's also just about the scale and the number of people who have the capability to do it.
Okay, understand. So actually, I had a question. In my experience, right, trying to get healthy food in Indonesia, it's generally very, very expensive, right? It's a lot more expensive to eat healthy. I think it's a problem globally, but more so Indonesia. Do you think
we need to teach you how to cook for yourself, Aaron? Cooking in the shopping for vegetables in the pasar is not expensive.
That's true. That's true.
Yes, but that's actually that is a big misconception, and it's not Indonesia. It's many countries as well. There is a perception but that's actually because generally food trends tend to start quite premium, and so that's where the perception comes from before it becomes mass. So yeah, it's not expensive. So don't let it be a barrier to eating healthier.
Okay, thank you for that, guy. I will make it a point to cook myself more. Reyhan, we lost you for a bit there, but I think the question was more in terms of trying to relate more to the audience. A lot of Japanese companies here today. I think a good question for you would be, I think you're in the automotive space. A lot of Japanese companies operate in that space here. What's your view on collaborating with Japanese companies? And a secondary question is that you talk a lot with Sequoia, right? So you are very tapped into the startup industry in Indonesia. I think Guy shared a bit about the trends in food. What are the other sectors or industries that are trending in 2021? And what is your outlook from who you've spoken with, in terms of collaborating with companies corporations overseas, such as Japan?
Yeah, so maybe to answer the first question, so Japanese companies has always been famous for automotive, as you mentioned. And even before starting this company, I was actually a consultant, consulting with multiple car assembly companies, which I realized that one of the biggest pain point for a lot of these companies is in relation to gathering market insights on to improve the productions or to improve the replacement parts to make sure that the useful life is even longer. So what we generally do, our system was able to capture a lot of the after-warranty cars period, understanding which replacement part has been changed on what particular car make model, in which in a general sense, it's a very useful insights for a lot of the car assembly companies for this research and development phase to understand what is the main problem for specific replacement part and try to improve it accordingly. And so from that standpoint on reducing the amount of research time needed by collaborating with a lot of these startups, particularly in Otoklix in this case, to gather insights together to build an even better product for the customers. In this case, an even better replacement parts, an even better car from a lot of these insights that we were able to capture through our tech platform itself. And I guess aside from that, like looking to not only in the automotive sectors, but there are a lot of other adjacencies involved, like where insurance, financing, all of that are somewhat able to provide greater value for a lot of these automotive owners in itself, which is something that we try to aim to achieve the same common objective, which is to delivering value to the customers. And in addition to the second question, like what you mentioned, like the sectors that we were been talking to, like one sector that has been growing very well throughout the COVID, and a lot of Sequoia's portfolio is education technology, particularly with the COVID situation. Is a lot of edutech emerged in Indonesia, where people are not like students are not going to school, so students are working studying remote. So education tech is definitely one sector that has been growing very well in Indonesia, has begun to see a lot of spotlight with a lot of the other investors from the States, as well as even the Middle Eastern regions as well. So which we know some of them, that we talked to some of them, that not a lot of them, like not a lot of these startups have been like talk to a lot of these larger enterprises to conduct a lot of collaboration, at least from what I can understand so far. But I can say like has been very open discussions where collaborating with larger enterprises, particularly in Asia, where the market is somewhat similar, whether Japan and Indonesia, where it will create a lot of synergies involved with a lot of these startups, which we think that somewhat a lot of these other industries, not even in Otoklix, will be some sort of a good collaboration discussion to begin with.
Yeah, I think edutech, I think we've seen too. Edutech makes a lot of sense, right? I think one, you mentioned, Martin, that the challenges of COVID have forced everyone home. But even from what you guys mentioned in terms of talent, ability to use digital, so edutech really solves a lot of these pain points, right? From elementary education all the way up to upskilling people. The use cases are very clear. Obviously, from our perspective, there's still a lot of infrastructure challenges in terms of delivering content that could benefit from a lot of governmental support. I think I see a question here in terms of open innovation in Indonesia and how it relates to other countries. I think I want to get you guys' perspectives too, but I think from PNP ourselves, right? We operate, as Anggita mentioned, in I think 15 countries now. And open innovation is something we've been trying to push ever since Saeed started this company in 2006. And I'll be honest with you guys, Indonesia has been the toughest market to crack for us. And that's why we're so happy to have a name like Nestle on board, you know, to help really bring awareness to this concept, right? Indonesia itself, in our experience, trying to pitch to the bigger corporates or conglomerates, a lot of their mindset is still centered around internal innovation. Like, I am big enough and I have so big of a market share, I want to build it myself. And I have the capabilities to do it, right? Whereas I think from both of you guys' sharings today, a lot of things can be done more efficiently and more effectively through open collaboration. So I think one of the biggest challenges, I think, as Guy mentioned, for his big company is to change mindset internally and change how people do things themselves. Indonesian companies have that same mindset too, you know. They've done so well, they are so profitable. So it's about trying to get them to embrace the idea of, hey, let's make this small changes and work with people outside to become more effective. I think it's an ongoing battle, but we are seeing more and more progress on that front. And a lot of it actually has been driven by the challenges posed by COVID. I wanted to get your guys' perspective. Guy, actually, quite interesting too, because you did say that you came from a couple other emerging markets. What's the difference towards open innovation in your experience working in those countries as opposed to Indonesia?
From other corporates or in terms of the ecosystem?
Ecosystem within that country itself, maybe.
I think Indonesia has the most untapped talent. It's just a matter of connecting us all together. It's here. It's here. You've just got to find it, man. That's it. That's the key. And that's the biggest objective of us connecting with Plug and Play, right? We can't go out and source and find. But when you look, you find. It is here. It requires a bit more patience. I would say. I would say a bit more patience and more clarity and being more specific on problem statements, if that makes sense, right? So, you know, when we have discussions with Plug and Play, we need to be clear as a corporate on a very, very clear, tight problem statement objective, what we're trying to solve. I find maybe in Indonesia, the more broad it is, it's harder to find the right partners. So I would say a bigger difference maybe would be working with more smaller chunks than necessarily 2 or 3, you know, maybe big ones that might answer the question. So yeah, more discreet, but yeah, the talent is here, no doubt at all.
It's a very good point, actually, Guy. We agree with that too. I think in our experience in Indonesia, the partners that we've delivered the most success to are partners that give us very, very precise problem statements. And in that sense, yeah, that's very, very poignant. Reyhan, I actually wanted to get your perspective on this. I know Sequoia, you're part of Search right now, right? And a lot of the Search companies are from other countries too. Is open innovation something that's trending in the other countries too? And have they shared a bit about like what it's like in their ecosystem?
So maybe to give you guys a little bit context, like about 80% of the companies in Search are actually from India, where India compared to Indonesia, in terms of tech or open innovation, it's slightly more advanced or even much more advanced, where there have been like a lot of the larger conglomerates there have begun a lot of discussions with a lot of these smaller startups. Like one example is a SaaS company that is trying to transform the human resource management system in India, where they've been able to connect with a lot of the larger enterprises, where because they are more open to discussing with a lot of these tech startups, because it is actually the startups ecosystem there in India is actually longer compared to Indonesia, and it's larger right now. Although we have seen that Indonesia is actually growing to that scale soon, hopefully. So in a way, it's kind of the problems here in Indonesia is much more apparent compared to India there. And one of the reasons that we observe that as well, like from a startup standpoint, is that many of the larger companies here in Indonesia has also a lot of the professionals has this tendency of the fear of doing any risk. And so being able to tap into or work into smaller startups that might actually endanger the core business in itself without actually listening it through piece by piece is sometimes most of the cases the biggest problem for a lot of the startups on actually doing a lot of this collaboration, because they don't want to take some risk involved to provide the collaboration needed that can take the company to a greater level, because they where they are already secured with the current comfort zone that they already have. So from a startup standpoint, from my observation, talking to a lot of the larger conglomerates, that is the common hypothesis that I made, where it's like where Indonesia, as you mentioned, as I mentioned previously, is slightly behind compared to India. But I won't be saying that Indonesia cannot actually reach India's level, because we believe that Indonesia can be as great or even greater, as long as we invested, as what Guy said, to the right problem statement, to the things that truly matters, and the human capital must definitely be improved.
Yeah, thank you for that, Reyhan. I actually like that. So I think it's true. A lot of people here, like corporates, are scared to take that risk. And I think I like this because it ties very much so with what Guy mentioned too, to break it up into chunks. Obviously, the more precise the problem statement, the more people you use, the more you diversify your risk too. So it could be something that we hope to see mindsets changing across the board and across the industry. I think we just wanted to remind the audience, if you guys do have any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat box. Honestly, I'm actually out of questions for you guys for now, but I do like to always ask whenever I moderate a panel, right? What's the one insight you would share with the audience today? Very specifically in terms of like the topic that we're talking about today, so open innovation. Is there something that you guys, what's the one takeaway if you were to summarize everything that we talked about today? Martin, I'll let you go first.
I guess one thing for sure is open-mindedness and clearly defined problem statement, and breaking it into small chunk piece and looking into it not only from the internal standpoint but external standpoint, where the openness to actually collaborate, or actually not only working with other startups but look into other actually programs, or even the government, to actually solving the problem together. But that wouldn't be possible until you have a clear problem statement to begin with. Like all other startups, you got to start from the foundation, like what's the problem you're trying to solve. Then you start figuring out, defining your hypothesis and gathering the solution, at least the insights to actually going to the problem, to solving that problem. And always remember, and something to keep in mind, that the solution you wouldn't found the solution directly unless it's very lucky. So there will be a lot of iterations involved. So the flexibility to adapt with the existing circumstance and the new revelation to update or create a new hypothesis involved to ultimately solve the problem statement is very important, I guess.
I like that a lot, Reyhan. I mean, very startup mindset, right? Problem centric, and then trying to find a solution. But I do agree, open-mindedness, being flexible and being open and being patient, I guess, right? Because as you mentioned, you're not going to find the right solution at the right time, because that would be too easy. You always have to be open to iterate and be flexible enough to work with the solutions provider. Guy, what about you?
Yeah, I think maybe just as a separate point from if you're a corporation, don't expect you're going to change the whole corporation, because that's not the objective. If you're the innovation champion, or you're the one responsible for looking outside, it is about just having a few people on board, a few sponsors, and just taking it step by step, really. This isn't about creating another version of your existing company. This is doing new things and doing them differently. So the expectations have to be very different. I think on both sides, the biggest win-win comes when everyone really, really, really has the art of listening. Because we come from such different worlds that it is, and I think that's also part of this whole thing which Martin was saying about iteration, right? Iteration also comes through the communication and talking and listening and listening and listening, because only then will the two things come together and there'll be a positive relationship. Because at least for us, we're in this as a symbiotic relationship, right? Both have to win, and both have to gain and from the partnership. So I think I would just say that from the perspective of both sides. The biggest way of behaving is really listening and learning and taking time and expectations, and not assuming that you're going to change a big company into this innovation powerhouse overnight, because that's not the objective either.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Guy. Great perspective. Listen, don't expect change to happen immediately. So an element of patience there too, but being open-minded, I guess. I think that's all for today. If there are no questions from the audience, I really, really want to thank you guys so much, Guy and Martin, for the time today. Extremely insightful. It was really an honor for me to learn from you guys, and I'm sure the audience feels the same way. So thank you guys so much. Wataru-san, back to you.
Thank you, Aaron, and thank you for the great panel. So it's time for closing. So please be noted that later I'm going to send you some questionnaire to via your registered email. So, and if you like to connect with the GK Plug and Play and Nestle and Otoklix, please let me know that. Please let me know. I'm gonna introduce them and I'll connect you. That. So again, thank you so much for attending the webinar. Have a nice day ahead. Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.